Hello and welcome to the first and hopefully not the last installment of the Flea Flicker podcast. I'm your boy Andr'e, and I'm here to talk a little bit of college football. As you can see, I am a Nebraska Cornhusker fan. Go Big Red. We are a franchise that has been snake bitten for quite some time. We have won 5 national championships. I was lucky enough to see at least 2 of those in my lifetime, and I'm very proud to be from Nebraska. Now I get it. I know a lot of y'all are saying there's black people in Nebraska. Yes, there are quite a few of us. If you go to Omaha, you will see predominantly mostly black people. When I go out of town, I get all the time, you from Nebraska? There's black people there. Is it cornfields? It's a regular city just like any other city. We have malls, we have streets. We don't drive down the street in dune buggies. But with that being said, I'm very, very happy to be doing this podcast right now on Nebraska's bye week with us at an astounding 5-1. Yes, miracles do not cease to happen. Nebraska is 1 game away from bowl eligibility, and I don't think there's anybody more excited in the Midwest about that than me. With that being said, I will also be talking about the University of Colorado in this first podcast because we're almost tethered to one another. And why I say that is Colorado is one of Nebraska's biggest rivals. Always has been, always will be. That's why the tickets to the Nebraska-Colorado games are always $200 and up. It's a rivalry that really got heated up in the 90s. It hasn't been as big or as publicized since we went to the Big Ten, but it is what it is. Colorado, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Iowa, these are teams that if Nebraska plays, don't expect me to give too many props to the other team because these are our die-hard rivals and we don't get to play them all the time. But with that being said, let's talk about Matt Rhule and the job that he's done in Nebraska. Now, to give you a little bit of context, when Scott Frost was fired, the coach I wanted was Deion Sanders. And the reason I wanted Deion Sanders is for decades I've seen the best recruits go to teams that are not the Cornhuskers. They go to Texas, they go to Tennessee, they go to Baylor, they go to all these other places where we used to just go in and swoop up as much talent as possible and then go win a national championship. But as everything is, time inevitably changes. And we had a team where we were a run first team pretty much the entire time we had been in college football. So we had to transition to a pass oriented team to get back into the flow of what current football was. But that's the thing that I am enjoying so much about Matt Rhule as the coach. Matt Rhule to me coaches like the Giants in the 90s. The Giants in the 90s, the New York football Giants, if you need more context, they won Super Bowls, at least one. I had to go back and look, but I know at least one. They won the Super Bowl by having a stout defense, excellent running game, and a serviceable quarterback. Now, last year, Nebraska won, I think, 4 or 5 games. We were a few games below bowl eligibility. But with Matt Rhule, from what I know as him as a coach, is that every program he's at, the first year they don't do so well, and the second year they make steady improvements to becoming a better team. So based on our wins last year, I came into this season hopefully predicting that we would win at least 6 to 8 games. 6 games minimum, so we get in a bowl. 8 games I would be comfortable with. Now this 8-4, or if I had $1 for every time that I thought we would be that in the last couple years before week 7 or 8, I probably wouldn't have to do this podcast. I have enough money to just do whatever I wanted to do. But that's the thing about being a diehard fan. When you're a diehard fan, you only want your team to be good again. You don't care about the naysayers. You don't care about the haters. You know what your team is. You know what they used to be, and you know what you want them to be. So with that being said, let's go over to Colorado. Now, the reason I wanted Colorado coach Deion Sanders is I know what Coach Prime does for kids. I've watched this man coach for the better part of a decade. I've watched him on his TV shows. I've listened to kids that he's coached under. Coach Prime is trying to prime you to be a man. When you leave as a college football player, you leave your family, you leave your friends. Unless you're going right down the street, you're going to leave some of that. So your coach has to be a father away from home. And when I look at Deion Sanders and I look at the players who played underneath him, they all seem to look at him more as a father figure than a coach, because he does wonderful things for these kids' lives. And with that being said, I wanted Deion because, like I said, how easy would it be to recruit players to come to Nebraska when you have a Pro Bowl Hall of Fame player as a coach? But with that being said, this is Nebraska. It's the Bible Belt. We do things a bit differently around here. All the flash and that's not really Nebraska football. That's not really what we do. Back in the day, we were the team that beat the flashy teams. You know, we beat the Florida Gators. We beat the Miami Hurricanes. We beat the Tennessee Volunteers with Peyton Manning. And yeah, look that up. Nebraska Cornhuskers got in Peyton Manning's cheeks. I seen it. So going back to Colorado, if you look at the players on Colorado, they come off as very brash and very arrogant. But they should. Most of them kids were playing in Jackson, Mississippi last year. Have you ever been to Jackson, Mississippi? I haven't, but my friend recently moved down south. And the first thing he said was, anybody hating on Deion Sanders for leaving Jackson, Mississippi hasn't been to Jackson, Mississippi. It's very slave-related town. It's very rundown. Buildings and things of that nature need to be replenished and revised. My friend told me there's trees down there that you definitely know that they hung people from. Like, you can tell by the way that the tree looks that you can tell people have been hung from them trees before. With that being said, Colorado, coming out of that scenario, sounds like a little piece of heaven. If you ever been to Colorado, it's beautiful. You go up there, it's mountains up there, the air is real fresh, the people are real friendly. It's actually one of the nicest towns, cities, just the whole state of Colorado. I love it. I go to Colorado all the time. I went to Colorado for my birthday this year. But with that being said, we fast forward to Scott Frost getting fired, which was a very difficult thing to watch as a Nebraska football alum, whatever you would want to call it. Scott was that man. He came here from California. He won us a national. And he won us a national after basically our Tim Tebow, our football Jesus, Tommy Frazier left for the NFL. So with all that being said, Scott is a bit of a hometown hero. You know, even with the record, he can still come here, get a meal. People gonna take care of him. He probably still got a house here. But for this to be your first or second head coaching job, what we needed to happen, I don't think it was in the cards for Scott. Scott was snake bitten from the get-go. I remember the first season we had a lightning game where the game got delayed and we basically didn't get to play that game. And it just started a trickle effect for the rest of the season. After that, the whole rest of the season just wasn't going to be the same. Then the next year was COVID, and we were one of 8 teams in the Big Ten that actually wanted to play. So the NCAA decided to punish us by making us play Ohio State the first game of the season, which I thought was completely unfair. We played like an 8-game season. All 8 of the teams that we played were all in the division, so we had no outside division hopes of wins or anything of that nature. So Scott Frost gets fired. We get to Matt Rule. I just seen Matt Rule get fired from the Panthers, and the Panthers look like a complete shite show. So I'm skeptical. But as a Cornhusker fan, I do my research, and as I do my research, I come to find out this man has been successful pretty much everywhere he's been, except for the Panthers. For you to win at a place like Baylor or a place like Temple, you have to be a pretty decent coach. I went to Temple University campus earlier this year. It is in the hood of Philadelphia. I don't know if it's getting closer to West or South Philly, but it's definitely in the hood. So if you can go to that university with the facilities that they have and you can make them a success, you might be able to do it anywhere. And that's what we needed. We didn't need the flash and the glitz and the glamour. What we needed was a competent coach to come in here and change the culture. We have a lot of amenities here in Nebraska that people would not know about. As a lot of y'all know, y'all get Omaha beef. Omaha beef is a sponsor of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, so those boys eat good. Pork chops, ribs, steak, the whole shebang. So their nutrition is on point. The strength and conditioning coach gets them bigger and stronger. And we fast forward to Colorado this year. They come into Lincoln very arrogant, very cocky, flashing their watches and chains and walking up to the Huskers in the pregame and telling us that we basically are about to get slaughtered. But the cool thing about football is you don't play football on a piece of paper. At the end of the day, the whistles get blown, the flags get thrown, the balls get rolled out, and the best team has to go out there and prove that they're the best team. If you watch that game, they had a point during the game where they gave you a simulation of what it sounded like on the field. So 90, almost 100,000 people at I believe it was 399th or 400 consecutive sellout, one of the two. So a history-making game, and the fans just we got as loud as they do up in Seattle. We were the 12th man that day, and at the end of the day, Colorado was humble. So around that time, I wanted to do this first podcast, but my love of Deion Sanders and my love of the Huskers, I felt like I was a little too emotionally involved at that point in time to start this up. But in retrospect, as soon as Colorado lost to Nebraska, it was like the sky is falling for Colorado and Nebraska is back and we going undefeated. I think both programs needed to pump brakes on that. Colorado is in a new division. They're in the Big 12. Well, formerly Nebraska used to be in the Big 12, and we ran it for a long time, but that's besides the point. There are so many teams in each division in college football. At the minimum, you're looking at probably about 14 teams per conference. With 14 teams per conference, and the fact that Colorado has had probably 70 to 100 players go in and out in the last 2 years, it's going to take a little bit of time. But in the words of one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, Aaron Rodgers, RELAX, relax. Colorado, you still have top 3 quarterback in college football. You have the most dangerous player on offense and defense in college football. The only thing y'all need to be worried about in Colorado is the fact that Florida State is garbage right now, and the fact that people in Florida have a lot of money for stuff like NIL So I wouldn't be too surprised if they come knocking on your door to get Coach Prime at the end of the season. He played for Florida State. His number 2 is retired there. It's his alma mater. And I guarantee you he will get more recruits at the University of Florida State than at the University of Colorado. I've been to Colorado. I've been to Florida. I prefer the people in Colorado. I prefer the weather and the beaches in Florida. And if me at my age, that's what I prefer. You can only imagine what a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid will want. With that being said, as also being a Florida State fan, we need to go ahead and pull that trigger. It's Florida. It's not very hard to end up the worst team in Florida based on the talent that they have there, going to other places if you are Chiefs. So if they're going to keep treating Deion like they doing in Colorado, I would go back home. And I haven't heard any real correspondence talking about Deion in Colorado and Florida State. So I wanted to be one of the first people with a platform to put that out there. Deion to Florida State is definitely something you should be trying to keep an eye on. But in going back to my Huskers, we have 5, I believe, about 6 more games left, something like that. I could see us going 4-2. We're at 5 wins right now. I would definitely like to see us get to that 7 or 8 range, but who knows? The defense is incredibly nice. We're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster. We're not thinking out the plays. We're actually like going in and producing on the field and not making mental mistakes. The penalties are down like crazy. And after the Rutgers game, like, I was on the edge of my seat because we've lost so many one-loss games, like one-score games. So once it got to 7-14 with 8-9 minutes left, you kind of get this feeling like, oh my God, not again. Like, please just pull this one out. And we did. And I think that was a confidence booster. And hopefully it was a curse breaker. My Cornhuskers have been very snake bit, like I said at the beginning of the video. But I definitely think we're on the rise. We're on the come up. People should have pumped their brakes when it was like we could be 7-0. I knew Illinois would be a problem for us because Illinois always tries to come and bring the noise when they play Nebraska. But with that being said, we got Dylan Raiola. They calling him Baby Mahomes. He works out with Patrick Mahomes, quarterback coach, and his little brother does too, and he just committed to Nebraska. So the Raiolas are continuing the Nebraska tradition. Dylan's dad and his uncle both played for Nebraska. I know his dad played for the Lions for about 11 years. So we bringing the lineage back. We got a lot of lineage players. I know Neil Smith's son plays for us right now. Willis McGahee's got a son that plays for us right now. So we're on the right track. We're on the right stride. I've seen this happen before, but this is the first time in a minute, especially here in Nebraska, where all the ducks seem to be lined up in a row. So with that being said, I want to give a special shout out to my boy Hutmaker at defensive tackle. Complete monster at defensive tackle. I played nose tackle. It is one of the hardest positions to play, especially if you're talented. When you're talented at nose tackle, you get double teamed pretty much every play. But it's just wonderful to turn on some like Big Red wrap up and to hear former players talking about Nebraska players that are going to be drafted. You know, what their draft status is. It's been so long. We've been so snake bitten. We haven't really even had players to worry about who they were going to get drafted to. So we're on the uptake. We're on the come up, and that's where we need to be. Thank you for listening, watching my podcast. I'm very low budget right now, but we all got to crawl before we walk. So this is my starter mission. I've started it out. I've been trying to get other people to help with this, but sometimes, like God says, God helps those who help themselves. So I came on here. I got my laptop. I went into my office and decided to make a video. So if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please like, share, subscribe. The Flea Flicker podcast, we're gonna try and get you a little bit of content at least every couple days. I got a video coming out about the NFL trade deadline. Tua Tagovailoa's brain is scrambled again. The Dolphins have no quarterback. The Raiders need a quarterback. There are several teams in the NFL who seemingly need a quarterback, and there's a guy who used to play at Alabama who's just sitting on the bench holding a clipboard. So we'll get into that in the next podcast, but I definitely want to thank you for your attention and your time. I've been your boy Andr'e. I will see you later with some more content. Go Big Red and go Free Shoes University. Peace.